as recruiters, we believe in talent, don't we?
Yep.
So why don't we believe that we can find talent anywhere else in the world? But me, it's not a question around where, because I'm sure there's smart people in every country. Maybe not so smart people in every country as
Yeah,
well.
that's
Um,
also true. Both are
yeah,
true.
go and explore, go and have conversations with people, because
Mm.
actually what it'll do is open your eyes up to who else is out there.
Joining me on this week's The Recruiters Recruitment podcast is a first. We've never ever had a guest on from West Africa, and he's joining me from beautiful sunny Kenya. I'm not jealous at all. This is Alex Hashash, who is the founder of Global Capability. Business launched in 2025 after an illustrious career working very specifically within the UK healthcare market, and with extensive experience across offshore, he launched his own business. We talk around who should be considering offshore, particularly to Kenya, actually, in terms of creating diversity, creating remote teams. I do get controversial because I challenge him on the morality of not hiring people here in the UK, and we do get quite deep on that. And we talk around which businesses should be doing it and how you should be doing it. So it's a real step-by-step, and it's a brilliant action plan if you are thinking about doing this for your business for now. So thank you to Alex. Let's jump in without further ado. This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast. And I think this is officially a first for our show, given we are now well into season 6, heading towards the end of season 6, actually. I think this is possibly my first ever guest from West Africa, which is very exciting. And we are talking about a topic today that is quite literally globalized. So wherever you're listening to this is relevant to you. And presumably, if you have clicks on the episode, it's because you understand this is something you should either be doing for your business or for the company you work for, or maybe you've just embarked upon this journey. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce to you today Alex Hashash, who is the founder of Global Capability, and he's based in beautiful Kenya. How are you, Alex?
I am very well, thank you, Lysha, and I appreciate obviously the invitation to come on. And
You're
yeah, it's
welcome.
going to be a nice conversation. Have to be honest, I've got the sun shining, so I don't want
I
to
was
make
just,
anyone
well, no,
jealous.
I was just about to say, actually, I'm disappointed that we've got the blurred Zoom background and you're not sat on a beach with at
Yes,
least blue sky, because
can
I'm
you
recording
imagine?
this in Manchester in February and it's actually chucking it down and has been all day.
I listen. The
What?
spring is coming. It
I
is
know,
coming, and
quite
the sun,
literally.
the sun, yeah, the sun is literally rising now much earlier. So yeah,
Right. Is
I
that,
feel like you guys are nearly there.
we're nearly there. Well, I mean, that's just, if that's not a parody for the recruitment industry in 2026, I don't know what is. I mean, we've got the
Right, right.
snake into the fire horse, we've got the winter into the spring. It does genuinely feel, the biggest barometer in recruitment is a rec to rec, i.e. me. And the most asked question is, how is the market? And I would say that it's like it's woken up. It's like spring has
Mm,
sprung, where people feel confident about hiring again, people feel confident about moving jobs again. So I really hope that's a tale that you will agree to. But I
mm,
know who you are now because we've got to speak offline a little bit, and I know that you're quite prolific on LinkedIn and you're doing podcasts, etc. But for my audience, can you give us a
sure.
potted history as to who you are and then what your company does?
Yeah, of course. So look, so Alex Hashash, I have worked in recruitment. Thankfully, I'm very happy since age of 17. Started as an
Wow,
apprentice. Yeah.
love
So,
it.
and actually, I'm the, I've said it before, but I'm probably the only person that actually planned to get into recruitment.
Love it.
So that was a strategy of mine. And yeah, managed to progress up to a director. Been in the same company for 16 years, and
Wow.
yeah, I was able to kind of live and breathe inside a recruitment business going through definitely a lot of changes in the market,
Mm, mm.
given the fact of, so I worked in healthcare recruitment, temporary, so for nursing, as you can imagine, the highs and lows. And yeah, I think for me personally, that's taught me a lot, not just about recruitment, but a lot about processes and
I'm
things that come
sure
with it.
compliance and
Yeah,
engaging with people who naturally don't necessarily move jobs very often. So you're having to be very consultative. So were you working
exactly.
private or NHS? Are we doing it in the UK, by the way? We're doing
Yeah, it
international.
was all well,
Right.
it did in the beginning of my career it was all London. So
Okay.
we started kind of the London desk at ICG Medical, and that was one of their brands called Cromwell, and this desk was pretty much, we just got into the framework. This was
Yeah.
when frameworks were very new, and
Mm,
yeah, we basically from the get-go, it was me as an apprentice going out, collecting documents from nurses, going to their houses, doing all the things. Obviously,
Wow.
before a lot of the regulations that came in
Yeah.
about certain documentation and
I love
verification and
it.
things like that. But yes, at the same time, it was me going out on the tube and just really. And you know what was amazing is that
I
I got to meet
bet.
these nurses when I was what 17, 18, and then to also still be working with them, you know, 10, 13, 14 years later is
Yeah.
that's the best thing because I always say, you know, you're pretty much that person's lifeline. You know, if
You
you're a
are.
temp,
Well, you're a
right?
peer to them. You're going through your careers together, aren't you? If you do your job properly, whether you're doing temp or perm, I've
Yeah.
always maintained that it's about
And
relationships.
I always say to every worker, I said, unless you,
Mm.
especially for nurses, normally you're a nurse and you're going to be a nurse forever,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I say, unless you win the lottery or I win the lottery, we're both doing this job until we retire. So
Yeah,
we need each other. So
absolutely. You
yeah, you've got to
do.
look after both each other's interests, basically. But
Mutually
yeah, look,
beneficial.
I guess for me now, using a lot of my experience in the last 16 years, I was in a global business. So kind of started off in London and then had teams in India and South
Mm.
Africa.
Okay.
And yeah, to this day, I'm now in Nairobi, Kenya,
Oh,
where
wow.
I have set up a business called Global Capability. And it's basically the new term of outsourcing is Global Capability Center. And it's a managed service. And effectively, it's a model where people can set up their own offshore teams and have the full infrastructure alongside my support here on the ground and the EOR taken care of as well.
I
So
love
hopefully that's a
it.
good snapshot for you.
It's an amazing what it was very succinct. It was very joyful. I love the sort of nitty grittiness of how you earned your stripes in recruitment. It gives it real credibility, and you've ended up in a beautiful country. Why Kenya? Out of interest, was there a particular reason?
Yeah, yeah. To be honest with you, it definitely wasn't planned. And yeah, look, I was here for my best friend's wedding. So from the
Uh,
UK, wife Kenyan, I was best man. Planned first time I took like a 2 week holiday where I wasn't checking my phone
yeah,
and
yeah,
doing everything
yeah,
I
yeah.
needed
I
to do.
have.
Yeah, but
She
at the
rolls her
same time,
eyes.
yeah, exactly. But you know, it was eye-opening, and basically, I had a lot of exposure to South Africa.
Mm,
When I was director at ICG, I had about 120 staff in my brand.
right.
So when I came to Kenya and obviously started speaking to a lot of the people here, I was like, wait, this kind of opened my eyes up to what more Africa had to offer, and I was like,
Mm,
really just enjoying my time here. I loved it. Obviously, the wedding was amazing, and
I
and
bet.
and lifestyle, of course, was amazing. But at the same time, I was like, hold on, I also need to pivot because you need to invest
Mm.
the best time that you have. And healthcare was always difficult, and I'm a
Yeah, well,
hard worker.
it's been
So yeah,
decimated, hasn't it? So you definitely did it
it
at the
really
right
has.
time. That's a whole different podcast. It's been an absolute travesty for so many amazing recruitment businesses and individuals. So
And even
we'll
nurses, yeah.
nurses as
Anyway,
well.
yeah. Then
Yeah.
just to hear
Mm,
people that were agency workers
I
and just,
know.
hey, do I have to go and look for another job? If I
I
don't want to
know.
do X, Y, and Z, 'cause it doesn't work in my life. But anyway, point
It's
point is,
yeah.
I decided whilst I was here, I was just kind of looking around and yeah, just had a light bulb moment. Came back to the UK and I was like, I need to do this. And
I
yeah,
love it.
in the new year, I was just went to my CEO and said, look, been with you since yay high. And
I
I
love
guess this
that.
is something I need to go and do. And
I love
I got the
the
best
whole
reaction.
story. You did well
Thank
clearly, and
you.
there's very entrepreneurial business by the sounds of it. So your business is. I love the fact that it's managed solution. So it's offshore. Is that everything? Is that including fee earners, or is that just more the infrastructure and the support people?
No, no, everything. I mean,
Everything.
look, in terms of laptops and things like that, we have
Mm,
servers in the UK, we've got VPNs, so we do all the right things from a data
okay.
protection, all those
Yep.
agreements. But
Yep.
obviously, yeah, clients would need to get a recruiter license on LinkedIn or something like that for their team
Yeah.
members. Yeah, but we will give everything else around that, if that makes sense.
That's incredible. So we're going to focus on those listening because we have founders, we have recruiters that are listening, those that have clicked on the link because they have not yet either considered or they are deciding what is the best route to go down when it comes to offshoring. So first and foremost, why should somebody consider offshoring as part of their strategy?
Yeah, I believe, look, as recruiters, we believe in talent, don't we? We
Yep.
go out and we find talent.
Yep.
So why don't we believe that we can find talent anywhere else in the world?
Hmm.
For me, It's not a question around where. Yeah,
Mm.
because I'm sure there's smart people in every country, and maybe not so smart people in every country as
Yeah,
well.
that's
Um,
also true. Both are
yeah,
true.
so I think you've got to be realistic. And yeah, if ultimately if you think you're a good recruiter,
Mm,
go and explore, go and have conversations with people, because
mm,
actually what it'll do is open your eyes up to what who else is out there. Look, I think
mm.
COVID proved that we can all work through a screen to some extent.
Yep,
So that's
absolutely.
given everybody confidence in terms of
Mm,
not having to be in one set location or even have an office necessarily.
mm,
But at the same time, if you want to make success out of certain things, you also have to learn through the pain. So doing the
mm.
remote setup versus office setup, it depends what culture you want to create and things like that.
Yep.
But I think ultimately, if you want to create the best team that you can, bring in ideas from different places. Obviously, cost is also something a big factor. We
Mm,
have to
yep.
be as profitable as possible. We
Mm.
all know that as recruiters, we are really good advisors for our clients, but we also have really bad hires sometimes ourselves,
Well, that's
finding
why
the
you need
right
people like me.
exactly. So we can make our own mistakes, and it is a less costly mistake if you make it
Mm,
offshore.
mm,
But hopefully that doesn't happen. But at the
mm.
same time, it depends how someone wants to build their business. Every founder is different. I think some founders, they want to have a bit of people around them, but I also think you'll go through that growth change as you go along, and you will look at the profitability and see where it actually should, the money be reinvested in the right
Yeah.
areas.
So this is likely, just to summarize that component, I think
Sure.
this is more around, rather than the where, it's the who can support your business, where you are then able to deliver what your clients need. And if it's a
Exactly.
business decision where you don't necessarily need those individuals physically with you, but are with you as part of a business strategy. So it could
Yeah.
be quite agnostic, actually. It
Yeah,
doesn't really
like,
matter.
I use healthcare as a good example.
Mm,
Healthcare, you need so many hands on deck, right?
yeah.
And really the way we managed the offshore model was teams on the ground, and this is similar for everybody else that, probably is
Mm,
running an offshore model, you'd like to hope.
mm.
But the team on the ground have the warm handshakes. You need to be out meeting your clients face to face,
Good.
meeting your
I'm so
candidates.
pleased you've said this
Yeah.
bit, because I was going to contradict you with all of that. So you've
Ah,
said it. Good.
Yeah, and
Brilliant.
and that's what it's about
Mm,
really, is that if you're on the ground, add value in the right areas, but also whilst you're adding value and you're traveling, you've got a team offshore still delivering, and
yeah.
and ultimately it's more about what you're delivering for your clients and how you deliver
Mm.
that service. And imagine you can leave, pick up a job, call your team, offshore, and they're able to already send you candidates even before you've left,
So
as an
how does it
example.
work? So what's
Sure.
the starting point? Talk us through the process. So let's say I'm a
Look at
founder and I've got, let's say my business is, let's say tech, right? Because tech
yeah,
is so broad, and there's probably maybe more tech recruiters now listening than there are healthcare recruiters. I'm just going to be assumptive. Tech,
yeah.
tech recruitment business. We've got, a lot of clients. We're trying to deliver on candidates. So what's our starting journey with outsourcing it
Yeah, I
to your
think
business?
first, you don't know what you know until you get told what you know.
Okay.
So yeah, I think you'll definitely need to get the right advice. But
Mm,
ultimately, it's also looking at which countries. I think a lot of
okay.
people will run to the usual countries, and maybe for the right or wrong reasons, whatever. I think accents definitely play a part.
Yep.
I'm sure US, big market on accents. I guess South Africa is
Mm,
really well placed when it comes to
mm,
accents. Philippines, of course.
mm, mm,
But I do think that you've got to look beyond the accent. So you've got to decide on
mm,
the country. You've got to assess which accents you feel
mm,
most comfortable with. But
mm.
I do think you have to look beyond an accent, because it can sell you in one way, but it's also you've got to understand you're working with that person afterwards, and are they retaining the
Yeah.
information you're teaching them? How's that being applied?
Mm.
Because then that's more frustrating, even if you sound great and you're training someone and it's not
Well, that's the
necessarily
same the
getting
world.
applied.
It's the same the world over. I totally agree, and I think from an inclusivity point of view, I'd like to think
Mm,
as an industry, but the reality is that's not true. And I think that there are certain cultures where there is this, disconnect between what an accent means and whether they are intelligent. It shouldn't matter, but I
exactly.
appreciate what you're saying.
Sure.
And I'm not going to make massive, stupid, stereotypical assumptions here, but I think that's a really big consideration to have. So, thinking about from a culture perspective, from a language capability, from an impression point of view when it comes to engaging with people on the phone, think about what applies to your industry. So that's the first thing we're going to think about. Okay.
Yeah, and I guess like the countries out there, and maybe not so many
Mm,
people maybe know the whole world
mm,
necessarily. And actually, I'll give a good example. That there is kind of a customer service confidence index. It's not necessarily going to be the, maybe the stats that ChatGPT might spit out at you when you're looking at which countries to explore. But this index really just explains who in the BPO industry, so outsourcing and externally, client-wise, which
mm,
countries do they have the most confidence
mm-hmm.
in to deliver the
Yep.
work and the
Mm-hmm.
capability? So really there's a ranking like from 1 to 16.
Okay.
India's number one, leading the way, of
Okay.
course, like
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
mature market.
It is.
You've
Yeah.
got countries like Dominican Republic number two, Colombia, and really kind of the Americas, very
Mm.
you've got Honduras, you've got Guatemala. I'm not saying they're number one, but they're in
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the 1
They're in
to
the top.
16. Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
they're in the top 16. But
Mm.
really, as you kind of start drifting on, South Africa's like 8, and then you've got Mexico around like 10,
Right.
which is quite surprising because I've known
Mm.
Mexico to be quite well established.
Mm.
And then yeah, you got Kenya in number 11, which maybe people don't really actually
Mm.
know. So I
Mm.
think this index will be really helpful for your listeners because they can
Mm.
look at this. It goes, so it's a survey firstly, and the second thing
Mm.
that it looks at is what's the language like? How good's the talent pool? How
Right.
good's the
Yeah.
education?
Yeah.
What's the
Absolutely.
political system like in terms of confidence, and also what's the economic confidence as well?
Okay.
But I think really just reviewing a lot more about kind of different countries out there will mean that you might uncover something that you didn't know, and you're a country that you didn't explore. And it's not just within
Mm.
this index, but it's also just about saying, look, where everyone goes, just appreciate that the talent, as always, in high demand, so will command a higher price.
Yeah.
So
So
then
it's
you're
all
trying,
relative. Mm.
yeah, and then you're looking at pricing. So for part of what the reason why I came here to Kenya was obviously I saw what was happening in South Africa. We went there in 2020 in terms of coming offshore in
Right.
that
Okay.
location,
Yeah.
and really, yeah, your best people were getting taken, of course, and it's more money. And I guess as a business leader, as director, also for me, it was just seeing kind of why everybody loves South Africa, and it's quite right. And I guess that saturation of the market increased the prices, and it just meant that it was just again it became something more to consider when it becomes about money as well. So part of
Mm.
why I came to Kenya was just to be in a position where it's like, hey, there is other emerging talent markets out here,
Absolutely. Love that.
and especially Africa as a continent. And I think there's a lot more that you can probably discover on the continent, not just in the south of it.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
I know there's a lot of rivalries in Africa with different countries,
Mm.
but at the same time, I think there's a lot here that you can also go out and explore. So yes, I think countries very, very critical. Also, your
Mm.
provider, you need an EOR if you're not going to set up an entity.
Yep.
EOR is employer of record. They'll take
Yep.
care of the compliance, so you can employ people, of course, and the payroll included. And then, yeah, it depends how you want your setup. Do you want someone at home or in an office? And that's
Yep.
really where then as well you can start looking at different models. But hopefully I've given
Okay.
a good fair chunk of like the
Really,
first beginning pieces.
really, really interesting. And that's just given me so much to think about in terms of, if I was looking at this for my business, that you've just given us a total breakdown of everything that we need to think about. It's the where, it's the who, it's the how we're going to do it, and how that then will in fact allow me to integrate that into my business. And so this versus employing people in the UK,
Yeah,
where do you sit on that in terms of from a, I guess, not necessarily from a moral perspective,
sure.
but why should we decide to do this rather than employing people here to be based in the UK?
Look, I think every business owner should have the freedom and flexibility to run their business how they want, and it really depends on
Yep.
their own business model. What's the
Mm,
margin looking like? And I guess what makes sense. If it
yep.
makes business sense to do it, then it also is just as exciting to give somebody an opportunity outside of the UK. And don't get me wrong, let's
Mm.
keep the employment rate up in the UK. That's
Absolutely.
of
Well, yeah,
course
absolutely.
critical. But at the
Mm,
same time, let's also remember the more the business earns and the better, corporation tax and things like that. So there are added benefits there,
mm,
for obviously, I
yeah.
guess the UK. So I think when you look offshore, it's also just saying what makes sense for my business. How do I want to run it? But also it's exciting if you're going to have, global teams
Global
and people in
team.
yeah, when we brought in the offshore model in probably like 2013, 14, the way, look, and this is very crucial actually for founder or any business owner, but you need to have the buy-in of your team on the ground. So,
Of course you do.
when
Yeah.
we were implementing it back then, we packaged it up to be like, to each account manager, you're going to be a global account manager. And I mean that sounds pretty cool. And you could be a 22-year-old or 23-year-old and you're a recruiter and you've got a global team.
Global
That's
team.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really impressive. But I think, yeah, you definitely need to have your leadership brought in because there's gonna be moans and groans and we all love a moan here and there. So make sure that you got your team on the
What are you trying
ground.
to say? Definitely. Well, I think it's got to be a holistic approach, hasn't it? Because this is a business
Yeah.
strategy. This isn't just a decision that a founder's going to make siloed, I hope. I think this will be where you've recognized that there either isn't the talent here to physically do it, or you already have a model that allows you to have that remote
Mm.
aspect. And the reality is that I love what you said at the very start, this sort of diversity piece, in the same way we can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect the same results.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
about having that inclusivity and understanding what the opportunity is. So if you were starting out, a final question, I suppose, and this is just,
Yeah.
I guess I'm really putting you on the spot. If you were launching your own recruitment business now in 2026,
Mhm.
what would the key pillars be in terms of you setting your business up and how you would go about doing it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think
Mm,
personally, I would start with where's the more manpower needed or woman power or people
yeah,
power needed.
people power.
Because yeah,
Love it.
you have to make sure that you understand where that demand where ultimately it's the delivery function, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
that's what you need. And if you're going to need a lot of business development, which we all do, really that's going to have to be done if you want results because you don't want to make excuses for why business was
Mm,
brought on. It's got to be
yeah,
done by the leaders, the business founders, and probably someone in the
absolutely.
UK, right? That
Yep,
should be there. The
yep.
delivery function, once you start getting roles in, it's more about saying, I can deliver 10 times more because I can
Mm,
employ maybe three or four more people. So for me,
yep.
I'd look at the end-to-end process, assess where I want to have those warm handshakes and obviously business being brought in. That's
Mm,
going to be the first thing. And then, yeah, I would go off, look at which countries I want to look at from a delivery aspect. But, you don't need to do that immediately. You can just have
mm,
that earmarked in your business plan for the year or 18 months. And ultimately that might change because
mm.
a lot is changing across the whole world.
I was going
And,
to say
where are we going to be by
rapid
2030?
change. Oh, I don't even want to
Yeah.
think about it. I mean, in 4 years, God knows, we
Yeah.
will be avatars doing this. We won't be us,
I hope
probably.
not.
I'll be on a beach in Kenya.
Hey, the coast is lovely here, so if
It's
anyone's going to explore it, it is absolutely
Oh, I
phenomenal.
love that. I really love that. And I
Yeah.
think, we've, like I say, we knew it was a first before we even press record. So no, it's been really useful. And I think, there's not going to necessarily be loads of billers listening to this, but there'll definitely be founders listening without a shadow of a doubt, and leaders who work for, other founders listening, thinking, well, this is definitely something we need to explore because, from an infrastructure perspective, but also from an opportunity, it's so hard. It's always the irony that we get bottlenecks in our own businesses, like you say. We're often
Yeah.
risk averse, and this could be a really good, cost effective, easy to reach solution that will allow you. It's not going to suit everybody, it's not going to suit every
Exactly.
business, but it
And
could be a really good
yeah,
opportunity.
and it might, and that's the thing is like there's pain. Of course, there's pain. It's 6 months.
Mm,
It could be a year
mm,
of that. And when I say pain, I don't mean it's like you're pulling your hair out. I
mm,
mean, yeah, you've just got to be the best coach, the best mentor that you can.
yeah.
But once
Mm,
you get the best team, i.e., you get a
mm,
great
yeah.
person on the ground onshore, and you have a team offshore, and that works. You have the recipe for success because you all of a
Yeah,
sudden
definitely.
the delivery team and obviously the whole kind of client candidate experience is there. And actually
Yeah.
that's probably one of the most rewarding parts of
Mm,
it, is that actually you see where you've got the right match of talent and right match of people. They all
yeah.
get on. They're not moaning at each other like you didn't do your work or whatever
Yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah.
And actually,
Absolutely.
really, for a business leader, you feel confident that if you're going to get a job in or you're going to get a role, I'll give it to these people that can deliver. And I think if you can create the best team with a mix of
Mm.
onshore and offshore, then you're going to win, in my
And
opinion.
actually, because obviously every other episode pretty much is there's got some sort of AI and automation conversation, and then we haven't talked about AI and automation. It's amazing. Is that all of what you're suggesting here is that it's all still human touch, and it's all still about
Yeah.
relationships, and it's all still about that detail that we know. I mean, I see AI now that just does the grunt work, and I'm happy
Mhm.
about that, by the way, because who wants to do grunt work, right?
JD.
And I am. That's kind of, it's kind of where I'm at with it, and I think that's
Yeah.
probably a very good summation. So I think this is for me, from a humanitarian point of view, I think it's just a much more valid than I would rather speak to somebody who is in offshore than speak to a
Oh, very
person
well.
rather than bot. Absolutely. That's how I'm going to leave it. There you go.
Yes.
What would you rather do? Speak to a human or speak to a bot? You've
Speak to a
been
human all day.
fantastic. You've been so
Thank
much
you.
fun, and I know that we spoke off camera that you've obviously committed to a lot of podcasts lately, and I know it can be quite exhausting, and you've had such gorgeous energy,
Thank
and I
you.
think you're great, and I think it's a really amazing story that you've told, and it looks like we need to get you up in that top 5, don't we?
Yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully, but to be honest with you, I don't.
mm.
I'm a Tottenham fan, so I'm not really
Oh
about league
no, let's not
tables.
go there.
So
I was gonna say I'm a Man City fan, and we both want Arsenal to not win, don't we?
yeah, no comment.
That's
I'm not
that's
that bitter. No, I'm joking.
oh,
I am, but I'm just trying not to make it public.
I know.
No,
It's fine.
I, yeah, I think it's a blessing and a curse. I'll
We're
leave
we're
it at
losing we're
that.
losing all the non-football fans, but anyone that's a football fan knows that Spurs. I mean, I'm devastated. My late father was a Spurs fan, so it's a bit
Yeah,
like you kind of I still want them to stay in the Premier League. So let's hope
thank.
by the time this goes out there that the Premier League would be a travesty.
Don't say
My dad
that.
wouldn't be
Thank
happy.
you.
I'm sorry. So
Thank you
lovely
so
to meet
much.
you, Alex. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
joining
much
us.
for having me.